Good morning, everyone. If you try to separate these, you will not have peace, and you may lose everything. If you try to separate these, you're not going to have peace in your heart, and you may lose everything. Before we get into this, let's review last week. Before we get into that, I just want to share a little something from our pre-K. So this was during Catholic Schools Week. They decided to give me some thank yous. I think some of these were coaxed along, by their teachers. Dear Father Dennis, I love that you are a priest here. You are kind, generous, and thoughtful. Well, thank you. All right, so thank you for giving me courage for baseball and basketball. Thank you for teaching us about the saints, like Teresa. It's spelled Tar-Isa. So Teresa, Francis, and other saints. You are the best priest. Well, I don't know. Thank you for everything you do. You make church fun, and that you're always kind and always smiling. So thank you for being a priest for a long time. Okay. You are the best priest in the Word. So it's spelled word. I think he meant world. Thank you for teaching me about the saints. Thank you for teaching us about church. And now this one, it's not quite coherent, but they do have some really good pictures. This picture, there's pews, and then there's a caption that just has Z's, in the pew. And then there's the altar, and you can obviously tell it's me, and there's a caption that says, no Z's. All right, so apparently, I don't know. I guess the teacher must have told them, you can't sleep in church. So, anyways, it is fun. Just curious, how many people are going to root for Cincinnati? A few. All right, how many people are rooting for the Rams? Okay, how many people are rooting for the Steelers? Okay, all right, there we go. Okay. Well, we'll see, if it's going to be an entertaining game. Hopefully, it just brings people together and we enjoy a fellowship and a fun time. So remember last week, we talked about clarity comes through the common thread. So Isaiah was like, Lord, I'm a man of unclean lips and unclean words. And so there was that symbol of the angel that came and touched the coal to his mouth, and he was cleansed. Peter said, Lord, I'm an unclean man. I'm a sinful man. Go away from me. And the Lord looked at him and said, Peter, you're going to be fishers of men, so follow me. So the reality is that if God manifested, if Jesus appeared to you fundamentally, and he walked up to you and he said, I want you to do this, I believe that everybody in this room would say yes. If he said, even if it was a big sacrifice, if you knew that he was looking right at you and he was saying, do this, you would say yes. The problem is that we don't know, and we have to discern what God is calling us to do, and that's the clarity comes through the common thread. In other words, you have this experience. Do people still sew? Okay, I learned to sew in the Boy Scouts and also in middle school. So you thread your needle, all right, you make that first experience. Now you have this experience, and this experience. So the thread is connecting all of those. The last experience that we have, the thread is pulled, and everything comes together, and now, it's like a bunch of puzzle pieces, and everything, the picture is crystal clear. This is what I'm called to do. That's the way that God will work in discernment. He'll give us an experience. So you might say, Lord, I'm asking you, what do you want me to do? You're not listening. You're not answering. He is. He's answering over a period of time. And when it's right, that last experience will be the common thread, and it pulls it all together. Clarity comes through the common thread. Now, today, you can't separate them, and if we try to do that, then we're going to lose peace in our own hearts that we really desire, and we could lose everything. So Jeremiah, we hear in the book of Kings, Jeremiah is preaching to the king, and the king is not listening. In fact, the king is worried about his finances. The king is worried about his politics. The king is worried about his military, and so he separates his decision in these things from God. He knows Jeremiah to be a prophet. He knows that Jeremiah is speaking the words of truth. There is a clarity that he understands, and yet he still chooses to do what he wants to do. He separates these things from God. And for them, they lost everything. The northern kingdom was separated from the southern kingdom by the king's wishes. The northern kingdom was overtaken and put into exile. And then eventually they came to the southern kingdom and exiled them. They lost everything. Their lands, their crops, they were completely taken over. Their freedom, everything was gone. The only thing they had was their lives. So if we try to separate these things from God, then that can happen. I mean, essentially, that's what he's saying, Jesus is saying in the second part of the Beatitudes. Woe to you who are rich. Well, the World Health Organization says that anybody who lives on $10 a day or more is above the poverty level. 80% of the world lives on $10 a day or less. Think about that. I don't know what we're up to, if it's 8 billion people. But how does it feel? I mean, how does it feel to be a part of the richest people in the world? That comes with a responsibility. Now, woe to you rich. Well, does that mean just because we're here and we have, does that mean that this applies to us? Well, not necessarily. Woe to you rich who are separating their riches from God. If you understand what we have is something that is in part given to us, in part we worked for, that we have a responsibility to do something with it, then no, woe to you doesn't apply to us. We can't separate these things. Let me give you another example. If you had an opportunity, this was your choice, you could do 2 more years of college and then make $200,000 a year for a 40-hour work week. Or you could do 5 more years and you could work 60 to 80 hours a week and make $23,000. Which one would you choose? Okay, it depends. It depends on what God is asking of you. See, that wasn't just a make-believe scenario, that was my scenario. So, and if I isolated that decision towards finances or something personal, then, I'd be putting people to sleep right now. I mean, other than you, okay? I would have been an anesthetist. But the reality is, I chose the right thing because I didn't isolate it. And that's what he's saying today. Don't separate these things from me. He said, I've got a plan for you. I've got a purpose for everything that you have. And when you follow my path, I'm going to fill you. I'm going to fill you. And there it is. 15 years. There's been great times, very difficult times, and everything in between, but I never doubted. Don't separate those things, because what he has for us is a path of greatness.